Okay, we're gonna get started in just a second. We do have some beer up here. If you are just coming in, we have a couple selections from our brewery, Strong Rope Brewery, Dancing Grain, and Arrowood. If you need anything, please feel free to come up and grab something now. Then we can start our chat. Yeah, there you go. Don't be shy. It's not the last panel on the last day, but it is midday, so let's start drinking. If you haven't already. I know, right? Yeah. IPA, Kentucky Common, Cream Ale, assortment. I mean, we're not. This is not a. We're not going kind of like doing actual tasting notes on any of these. This is meant to showcase what we have, and you'll just kind of taste and enjoy. So while you listen to us jammer on. Kier, do you want to close that door, please?
This one?
Thank you, sir.
Nobody else.
Nope. All right. Beer.
And you don't have to take a full seed sample. You know.
Yeah, you can always sample. We got cups if you want to just pour. Feel free to just taste a bit. You can also come up during our presentation if you are like out of beer and you need more. Feel free to come up. It's good. What's up, buddy? Season 11 Outrage IPA. Everything here is 100% New York, as it should be for this panel. Would hope. You can take a can if you want. Take whatever you need. All of them. Yeah. You're just Stefan. You're the last one, so could you please? Lay down some stats. Yeah. All right. Well, we will not have a slide. This is if you've ever been in any of the talks that I've kind of put on. This is meant to be a conversation. This is meant to be kind of open. So if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand, and we'll ask and answer throughout. We want to have this kind of be a free-flowing panel. So this is building brands with 100% New York ingredients. I am Jason Saylor. I'm the owner of Strong Rope Brewery. Strong Rope Brewery is a brewery that in Brooklyn, New York, that uses 100% New York ingredients. We've been open for 7 years now, going on 8. I will let my panel introduce themselves right now. Yeah, do you have the mics? Yeah.
Worth using the mic? Does that even work?
On? Go help with the camera.
My name is Matt Schulze. I'm the head brewer at Arrowood Farm Brewery. We're located in Arrowood, New York, about an hour and a half south here. And we are in our, I think, 8th year of brewing beer, similarly. And we also use all 100% New York grain, hops, fruit in our beers. And we also try to use like the native bacteria and yeast that if we bring out any fruit, we like to use as much unprocessed fruit and kind of foster the terroir from the fermentation angle as well a little bit. So I think that's
good. Perfect.
Hi, my name is Rachel McDermott. I own Dancing Grain Farm Brewery in Moreau, New York, so about just literally a half hour due north of here. Our brewery takes as much ingredients as possible from our actual farm. So we built our brewery on the knowledge and experience of decades of growing different grains, and that kind of skill set from the previous generation now into my generation, and by doing so, we're kind of decommoditizing our commodities and adding value via products that people can consume on site. So yeah, we're committed to using New York State and as much from our 310 acres as we possibly can.
I'm Alex Bidermann. I am the head brewer at Strong Rope. I've been working with Jason for 4 years now. And brewing with 100% New York ingredients since I joined the brewery. So that's
Cool. Yeah, so really what we want to talk about is how each of our breweries has created brands and identities around beers with all New York ingredients. As Ben Foster kind of mentioned in the sustainability panel earlier, we have an opportunity to talk about what we're doing as farm breweries with our regional ingredients, and something that has probably not been out there enough. So we need to be able to foster these kind of conversations and get out there with those. So what we want to do today is talk about what we've done in that span of time that we've been open or operating, to try to let people know about the ingredients that we're using, the beers that we're making, and what we're trying to do with that. And I think one of the big things that we talk about is just kind of the style of beer, the style of our beers, and what we can accomplish with that. When we opened 7 years ago, there was a lot of like shooing away of the ingredients that we had and like what we couldn't do. People were kind of skeptical of that, and there was some truth to some of that a while ago, but that is not the case anymore. At this point, we can do pretty much whatever we want. Obviously, there are limitations to specific ingredients. Citra, Mosaic, some types of hops are not available to us. Some types of fruits, if you want to be working, you're not getting guava from New York really, unless you know somebody. I this. So there's a lot that goes into what we can try to accomplish, and it takes creativity from each of us to be able to do that. And if you were here last year, Sam Calagione talked about like trying to create, like everyone should be doing like a New York Pale Ale and get behind that, and that should be a brand, and we should market that. And I think that's a very valuable approach, or our approach. But how I see it kind of now is that I think it needs to be more organic. I think each brewery focuses on the ingredients that they have and the regions that they're in, and create beers through that. And in terms of the style conversation, it's what do we want to accomplish, and what can we accomplish while trying to create. Do we try to replicate exactly what we see? Do we try to create a Czech lager or a German Pilsner or an English thing? Or do we try to create our beers around kind of a general style? One thing I'm seeing on, I think that I see on IPAs is that, a long time ago, people were brewing just kind of beers and they were basing it around their region and they were basing a thing. As beer writers kind of came into existence and more taxonomy went into it, you started to kind of like narrow the focus, and everyone really started to see, okay, this is an IPA from that. And then that's when, judging and competitions became very focused. But as you know right now, what does an IPA mean? Everything means nothing. Like, it goes from the softest, juiciest, haziest little thing to, a super bitter West Coast double IPA. It's such a broad category. And in that, there's opportunity to kind of play with this diffuseness and like try to create styles. So, Alex, I would like you to kind of like maybe talk about those conversations we had. This was at the height of the pandemic, and we were only seeing each other for about 3 months, so it was a little weird down in the city. But like if you want to kind of go into what we were thinking of in the styles and like trying to get as broad as possible.
Yeah, so I think it was born of going a bit stir crazy, but we were kind of working at this point. I think I was still new enough at the brewery that I was still kind of living in this zone of making some amount of excuses for New York ingredients and saying like, well, we can't possibly compete with these state-of-the-art hoppy beers, and we're trying to find a way to communicate to customers that these are New York State IPAs. And I guess the dance was like, are you pointing to a deficiency in the ingredients, or are you trying to clue people into like this thing that they should be trying and checking out? And for a brief period of time, we entertained calling them dry hopped ales, which didn't last very long because
Didn't work at all.
consumers were just like, what the hell is this? And then our bartenders hated us because they were having to explain to someone, it's kind of just like an IPA, you should just get it and you'll be fine. So I mean, I think that's when we sort of realized in our immaturity in not understanding kind of how to communicate that in some senses the shorthand is the best thing we have to communicate to people. Like, you want this beer, it's better for us to not completely overcomplicate things and just say, it's important for us to educate our staff and have them be able to enlighten customers to things that they might enjoy, but we don't need to necessarily reinvent the wheel. And I do think, the day may come where, we get lightning in a bottle and we create some new style, but trying to force it is you're just kind of forcing an issue that at the time it's more important for us just to make competent beer with 100% New York ingredients, communicate to the customer as best we can that this is something very much like another thing that you enjoy. And then what we do typically is, it's 100% New York on the can, and we try to make sure that's the way we communicate to them.
Yeah, but for most of our IPAs, we'll say it's an IPA. And then from there, it is up to our bar staff. It is up to our marketing. We won't necessarily put on the can that it is a hazy IPA versus another IPA, because what I think we're still trying to do is to create a regional product that is of strong rope and what we're trying to accomplish. So it is an IPA. We have a breadth of different things within that. And then, the idea is that eventually, hopefully, things start to like kind of clarify and people can kind of like do that. But we're kind of keeping it open. But Rachel, I'd love to hear kind of more about like, what you're doing and you have a special thing because you're getting your own grains and you're making them and that goes into your beer. But like the cream ale, like that is your cream ale that is specific to your thing. So can you talk about that style and what you're trying to do?
Yeah, so when you originally asked me this question, my gut was like, oh yeah, people just keep coming in and asking for IPAs, which is like a little bit crushes my heart because, again, our core competency is being this grain farm, and so we want to make beers. We want to use beer as the canvas to like show what we do as farmers, and then elevate that beer by connecting with other farms across New York State to use their ingredients. We very early on, and we've only been open since August, so we're still new. But very early on, we were like, we're gonna make, ales and lagers and sort of more malty forward beers that highlight what we do and what we grow here. And then we quickly realized we have to have at least one IPA on, and so that's what we do now. But to your point, we don't classify if it's, West Coast style or if it's a hazy IPA. We kind of speak more towards what the ingredients we use, kind of more of the experience that those ingredients provide to the consumer when they're consuming it. So kind of a little bit more about what it's going to taste or smell like and why. But my focus, I think, going, as we go into the future, is going to be year over year, crop after crop. That cream ale could potentially taste different in a way, which is partially what makes our brewery unique, because we may have a drought year, or it may be too wet, or there may be some virus that blows our crop out, or we don't really totally know, or the cover crop that we used the year before pulled up micronutrients in that soil that changed the profile, the flavor of that corn. And so I think really my job going into the next phase of this business as become more and more mature is telling the story of how and why we make those beers, regardless of the style. We did this really cool thing when we opened up. We had a 25-acre field. The brewery sits on this hill in this 25-acre field of sunflowers, and we planted the sunflowers not because we were going to open with sunflowers blooming, because we were way behind schedule, but because I was trying to find a short season rotational crop so that I could go from winter barley back to winter barley, because I prefer to grow that and we can't monocrop. Perfect storm, they're blooming as we open, and there's so many people that we can't keep up, but it's going to be kind of the first year we see a barley crop with, after a very new and experimental cover crop kind of rotation. So I'm really interested to see how my Violetta from 2022 compares to my Violetta of 2023. So, yeah.
And Rachel, so talking about kind of the terroir of what you had, Matt, you're very much like kind of utilizing the land, and you talked about a little bit, like, can you talk a little bit more about how you're taking kind of what is given to you and then making that kind of your story?
Sure, yeah. I think just when we set out on the path of even just using what we initially needed to adhere to the farm brewery quota, which I believe was like 60% when I was starting out there. You had to kind of have styles that had some tolerance to inconsistency, I would say. So we, basically my favorite style and what even I started out as a home brewer brewing were farmhouse beers. So there were a few things that kind of just really the situation lent themselves to that. One of the things is that we have a hop yard that's like a little over an acre of planted hops at our farm, which was actually how our business started out before it was even a brewery. That we tried growing hops, and they technically are hops. They look like hops, but they don't really smell quite like the ones you can get out west, or even at some of like the really high quality hop growers in state. So we did a wet hop IPA a couple times and tried to use them in our bitter beers, but they honestly just were not that good. So we decided that we could get a much more compelling story out of them by aging the hops down the way that they do in Belgium, or anywhere that people have like these giant bales of oxidized hops. So we figured, well, we can start, and in maybe 3-4 years we'll have some really nice quality aged hops. And that kind of became the backbone of what we use as our farmhouse beer recipe, which is essentially the same recipe, like these 3 cans here, and I guess 3 additional can products, and then all of our bottled beers are all the same exact base recipe that we run through either one of 2 fooders and then into oak or into stainless, but we use those hops as the bittering hop in all of those beers. So kind of just like figuring out the best way to utilize what ends up in your lap, kind of is how I would describe it. And just having an open mind about it. And luckily, the farmhouse ethos, which we do apply basically to our other styles as well, is just follows that same line of using what's abundant and around you, and kind of thinking it as we're just trying to preserve a crop, really. And that's all that, if you break it down further than that. I think even when I started brewing, it didn't really click in my head that we were, you're just handling plants as you're manipulating different plants and just trying to create a good tasting beverage. So I think by coming at it from that end, the style slot into some more, some of the classic beer styles. But we don't even, we call this a wild ale, but I don't even think of that. I'm like, oh yeah, that is what it says on the label, but just kind of is what it is for us. And then we slot it into the BJCP labels here and there. And of course we brew IPA too, but.
In terms of the terroir, if you're on a farm, so how many people here are farm breweries? Is everyone a farm brewery pretty much? And how many people are creating 100% New York beers? Okay, so not everyone is doing, okay.
100% of our beers are New York beers, or we're creating?
No, just within your kind of portfolio. Like you have 100% brands. It can be 100% across the board, but it could just be 100%. Because I think right now what we're trying to really talk about is being able to talk about these things and go to what the speaker this morning said is trying to kind of foster this regional identity and what we're trying to do. So, you know, I think there is some talk that we can do about terroir. Obviously, if you're, you know, you have 6-row, or if you have a kind of mixed firm kind of space and you're on a farm and you have that capability to the land, or even, you know, if we're in the water, but like our beers are predominantly clean ales and lagers. So unless we're really kind of focusing on a smash beer, or something where we show just a single hop, which you can try our Vista hop at the Hop Guild table, that is 100% Vista IPA, or it's a single malt and we're showcasing one of New York craft malts or Hudson Valley malts, just one malt, and like we're not going to see, once you start, there's a lot of manipulation, so the terroir can get lost. So I think that's there is something that, like, you know, I think they can talk about, but that's not necessarily something that I think we can necessarily point to as much, because there's just so much manipulation through the process for everybody, for us to get into. But I mean, you know, I would like to kind of get a show of hands. How many people talk about? Oh yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, that's good.
Our position, we're like probably 95% New York State.
Yeah,
There's just certain things I can't get over, like, you know, yeast is one. You know, I love the Cosmic Punch yeast for Omega,
Yeah.
or IPAs, and if I start to just keep rebreeding that in-house, that still doesn't feel 100% New York to me.
oh interesting, okay.
Our fruited stuff, you know, I have to throw mango in.
Yeah.
I bought it from a New York supplier,
Sure,
but those mangoes weren't grown in New York.
they were not, probably.
And like, you know, dextrose, things like that. Like, I'm trying to find suppliers right from New York State. It's hard to, yeah.
So I would like,
Anybody's using a sugar, try and find like a sweet sorghum instead. You might be able to find it. There's a producer in
It's not
Vermont.
impossible to find something like there was a, doesn't matter. Something close to us.
no, I think it does matter. I mean, I think
That's like, I don't have.
We're-
What's that? Talk about it. Other people want to.
this is a safe space. It's a trust street.
No, it's next door. It's a sweetener company. I can't even think of it.
So I would actually like to get a show of hands. How so? I mean, if we're talking about yeast, I mean, we're actually not 100% New York. If you went that model, but we will repitch many generations on them. So, show of hand. I'm not trying to call you out, but like, who is anybody else kind of in that camp where they're like, oh, we're not 100% New York because we're using yeast from Omega or, wherever, Imperial or something. You're in that? You feel that?
We order lager and Oreo yeast from out of state.
Yeah.
And I'm brewing salt.
But you're banking your proprietary strain with someone that's not in the state, correct?
Yeah, that's also true.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's what I mean, but I think, in my mind, I think that I would say, like, in terms of the yeast thing, like, I would not necessarily count that amongst the main ingredients. Obviously, it's doing all the heavy lifting to create the beer that you're drinking.
We don't. I mean, we say that our beers are 100% New York.
Yeah.
It's all malt, all hops, obviously water.
Yeah,
You know, we don't say that of all beers, like our sour IPAs and stuff, we'll throw mango in sometimes or something, but, I also harvest peaches from my own house.
Right.
Too, so it's like, where do you draw the line? And I want people to know, we only hold one license, it's New York State Farm Brewers license.
Right.
That's the only thing I hold, which I love it for many.
how many people are just a farm brewery? Cool. All right.
Side note, I don't know if the rest of you that hold only that license know this, but you can serve New York State farm wineries, cideries,
Spirits.
distilleries, all those products in your place. Too.
Yes.
Found that out last year, changed everything.
Yeah.
Not changed, but like.
No, I mean, it definitely helps. I mean, it helps to go to get things, but kind of, yeah. So I think the capacity of what you're doing, and I think what other brewers are doing is that we're you have that story, and I think you need to tell it. Are you?
That's what we're struggling with now. Is how we tell that story.
So what is your main problem that you think that you see? Are you seeing you're not able to like put that on the can? People aren't responding to that.
Well, we don't do a good enough job on the can. That's
Got
a
it.
whole nother story.
I mean, for us, so at one point and I think this is a big part is that we used to put very kind of specifically what malts and hops that we would use, but things kind of shift and change, and so we switched to 100% New York ingredients, and we put that on all of our labels, just so that we can deal with the kind of fluctuating nature of our suppliers and what we're actually doing. And it's like, oh yeah, we're using one type of hop, but actually we want to change it. So if we have that label, then we have to go kind of like redo that and get it reprinted and stuff. And so that can kind of throw things off. So for me, and I would love to hear what you guys say, but like, how specific are you getting on your packaging in terms of what you're expressing and what you're putting out there? And Rachel, you're doing the crowlers at the moment, but at some point maybe cans or bottles. So how do you feel about like the nature of packaging and how much you should say?
I have no experience in packaging, so I don't know for what it's worth, right? Like, take this with a grain of salt. But I think that the consumer, if anyone was in the marketing session earlier too, like the way I approach marketing, because I'm not really packaging, is very personal. Like, I share my life, I share what I'm doing, I share my kid. Not a lot of people are willing to do that. So I think, like, if you're very intentional about where you're sourcing your ingredients, the best way to get your consumer to connect to that is to share that process. So again, if you're intentional about that ingredient, it means something to you too. So share why it means something to you. Whatever like medium that takes place in, if it's a reel, if it's a story, if it's a email, if it's somehow on your label, I don't know, but like, I let people into my life. But my brewery is my backyard, it's my farm, it's my family farm, and my brand is come be a part of the farm family, right? You spend money here on my farm, it means I'm gonna invest in my farm. You get to come back to every year. So, I guess it just depends on what your strategy is and like what you want out of it, but I want to save the family farming tradition, whether it's my farm or my neighbors. So that's why that's my go-to,
Yeah.
I guess.
Matt?
On most of our cans, we specify that, like the IPA, for instance, will say 100%. We must have recently changed this. That one says 100% New York ingredients, but we were kind of dancing between like just saying hops and grain, but then it was like we just wanted to be consistent. So
Yeah.
we basically go ahead and say that, for the yeast question, like I guess at some point that is a, not it's splitting hairs at that, or it's a matter of interpretation. Yeah. Yeah.
Right, it's not.
Are you guys finding that you're getting more fans now that keep coming back because you're 100%, that that's becoming something that they want to see? Or is it just like, it's a story you're telling?
For us, it's with our kind of recent expansion, we were kind of in a more seasonal touristy thing, and I think it kind of depends on the location and who you're dealing with. For us, at our new facility, a lot of people don't even know. We try to put it out as much as possible, and we try to say it everywhere we can. Some people just want an IPA or a Pilsner, and they don't care, and that's fine. And that we will brew the beers that we want to brew, but that also are marketable and that sell in our tap rooms, because that's how we stay in business and brew more beer.
I think it's on our end probably negligible. I would say was the real answer.
It's I don't know how.
Yeah.
I think going to Rachel's kind of intentionality point. I think the intentionality and the realness that you create behind your brand will help build your kind of your market and your people coming to you and stuff, and obviously having good beer. But it's like, if you're real about it and you tell who you are, it doesn't hurt. Like, we will continue to do and promote 100% New York ingredients across everything that we do, even if people are not interested. Because I want to get, ideally I want to get to a point where we don't have to put 100% regional like New York ingredients, because it's just kind of like common, and it's like it doesn't really matter, and it doesn't move the needle because so many people are doing it. That's what is important. And the more people, the more farm breweries that we have that are actually kind of partaking in this, and it just becomes a thing, and our suppliers thrive, then it's like, then like we're in the right space. Because I want to go to Colorado and drink beers made with Colorado ingredients. I want to go to California and drink beers made with California. I want to go to Vermont and do the same thing. Like, I want people to come to New York to drink our beers, and as much of them are made with New York ingredients as possible, to like really get the experience of having truly regional products. Because yeah, I can make another hazy IPA with Citra Mosaic, but that's not really a regional product. Yeah, it's from New York, but it's not, like, in a way. So, and when New England style IPAs really kind of started taking off, and we were dashed away in our little brewery during the pandemic, that's when we started to think about, like, let's make a dry hop ale, because it's a New York dry hop ale, and they're not going to take away a New England style IPA when it's not even from New England. Like, why are they making these ingredients, and why is that the thing that's going off? And so we tried to do something that did not work. But people were like, I don't like that. I want an IPA. And you're like, okay, well, it's the same thing. But yeah, so I think what we're trying to accomplish, and each of us in our own way, and each of you in your own way, is to create a product that is of a place and speaks to a place, and that we can promote that. Yeah.
There's kind of other ways to do it too. I was visiting a malt house earlier this week before here, and they have like a beer trailer, and she had some graphics on it that said, like, I could pull it up, but something along the lines of like every beer supports 4 square feet of grain farming. And so, like, I don't want to say like, oh, nobody's looking at your 100% New York State whatever, but there could be other ways to just like say what you're saying without like kind of jamming it in there, right? Like, hey, what's cool about drinking this beer is that it consumed this much grain, or right, or supported these many farmers or these many malt houses or whatever. Like, there's kind of other ways to show that your connectivity.
Yeah.
That's what you mentioned, the marketing class, and I would always post email newsletters. So that class is like, that's how you tell your story right there. It's an easy way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, even blogs, getting a blog on your website, like it's not necessarily a driver, and don't think of it that way, but you can tell longer form stories that you can't necessarily do on social media or even newsletter, and you can kind of do different things. Like there's a way on your website to make that a more functional place. If you're not putting 100%, or if you're not putting that it's made with New York ingredients on there, then you need to. Like, every place that you have your tap room, your website, your cans, you should be telling that story immediately. Yeah.
What we found is that we are constantly trying to figure out better ways to tell that story, and like, the consumers don't really understand that there's a difference between made in New York, manufactured in New York, and sourced in New York. Like, it's like something that is hard to make that leap, that no, it's actually even better. And that's kind of like, hopefully that the more the word gets out there and the more people doing it, then, like you said, it will kind of seep into people's, consciousness. But it really is like, we often talk to our customers about, like, Vermont beer, like the difference between New York farm beer and Vermont beer. Like, yeah, you go to Vermont and get Vermont beer, but none of those ingredients come from Vermont. But in New York, like, you have that opportunity to actually like taste the beer that's brewed, with the ingredients that were farmed right here in our state.
Yeah.
And that's like, kind of blows people's minds, because they really don't think about that in other states. They are just drinking beer that's manufactured there and not sourced there. So, but it's hard to make that, get people to understand the distinction.
I think it definitely for us, I also witness, like, I'm a member of a homebrew club that meets at our brewery, and these are possibly some of the most educated consumers that we have. And there's been times that, 3 years into brewing at Strong Rope, I'll serve them an IPA or something, and they're like, oh, is this is all 100% New York? And it's like, yeah, it's been 100% New York since I've been here. So I think, there is this issue of, I don't think it's been communicated as effectively as it could from all of us about how unique of an opportunity, because there are not every state can do this, and I don't think everyone understands that, whether there are sustainability implications of what our supply chain is, it's a very unique situation where I talk to our suppliers on a very personal level constantly. Some people are just sort of, on an ordering platform and ordering malt from overseas, and it's a very, very different relationship that we get to have here in New York. And I don't think, some consumers may not care, but I think there's enough people out there to try, if we can try to figure out a way to communicate that message, that they would care, that there is an amount of people that care where their beer is coming from as much as they would care where their food might be. So,
I mean, if we had a badge, I know there's already so much shit on your labels anyways right now, but like if there was something that said like 100% New York, would you put it on? Like, who would put it on their labels if you had that? Yeah. But that's not. But the certified New York is not necessarily. Isn't it based on the? So maybe I need to get more thing. But like, I thought it was based on the thing. Yes. Hi. How's it going? Talk to us.
We're New York State certified. You can vouch for
Great.
how great the program is.
So New York certified is actually the whole point. The whole point of the program is to represent more the farm level and the producer level of it. So that's specifically why I came to this session particularly, because we want the people who are growing, supporting New York products, not just processing in New York.
Yeah.
So we would almost even, so part of the premise of our program is grown in New York. Food safety comes at the processing level, because when you guys make the beer is where all of that processing comes in. And then an environmental component, so sustainability, right? Soil and water comes out and does a free assessment on erosion, water quality, how you can continue growing sustainably, all of which is free. And then you get a handy dandy seal label to put on your product. These guys are putting them on, Hudson Valley Malt has it on their bags.
Laura, to clarify though, soil and water is not coming out to breweries. They're coming out to the farmers, right? So it's like more of it starts at the ground.
Your brewery may not be certified, but the products that you sell.
Yep.
So like,
Got it.
these guys put the label on a couple of their beers are certified because they come from majority New York products, whereas like your Citra IPAs are not yet grown and certified.
Got it.
Because they can't get all of those products from New York. So, like Dancing Rain Brewery would not be New York grown and certified, but their products would be. So they could put the label on, like you said, you have a few of them that are 100%, these guys, if you're 100% label, that grown and certified kind of fits it. That's exactly what we want to represent.
Cool.
So that we can market that New York product.
If Stewart's is using it.
Yeah, and we can work from Industrial Arts Brewing. Two of our main portfolio beers are currently certified. The process was really easy. We're a production brewery. We're not a brewery with a hop yard in our backyard. Like, we have to source everything. We have to work from suppliers for everything. And the process is not arduous at all. So I know that certifications can kind of seem a little bit scary, but Hudson Valley Malt is certified, so everybody that Hudson Valley Malt sources from, all their farmers are already certified.
So if some of our suppliers are not, so say.
So that's where the ADM comes in. So if you have a hop yard that you buy from, so we have a lot of hop yards in our program. Well, we'd like more. We don't have a lot, we have some. So the soil and water department came out to their farm It's a free assessment. It's not pass or fail. You're not going to come out and be like, you are not certified because you didn't pass this. It's tier 2 that you have to, they give suggestions basically. And then now they're grown and certified because again, the food safety is done at, then they send their grain or their hops or whatever to somebody's process into what they're, maybe they're LA Farm sells their grain to Hudson Valley Malt. Maybe their LA is certified now, and then, several of their farms, the majority of their farms are grown and certified. Now they can become grown and certified. Now when they're selling their malt to you, now we get into the dilution, right? So if they have a capability of making a 100% New York malt, so that's New York grown and certified now. Now you can buy that and put it into your products, along with your other combination of products. If that reaches that 60% threshold, then that product that you're selling. So there is a tiered approach. It can be, hers is very easy because yep, they're certified, cool. Oh, they have their AM, cool. Now you're in, now we can certify you.
But it's at the 60% of the farm brewery license,
The total product.
so it's not 100.
Well,
So
That's all you have to reach to be grown certified. You're 100.
Right.
But even better.
well, right, but and that's what I kind of want. Like, so I'm only a farm brewery. We have to abide by that threshold with the dual license. No offense to anybody in the farm brewery SLA committee here or whatever, but I don't think it really matters at this point. I don't think the license class matters at this point. I think we need to be, as brewers, focused on working with 100% New York grains, regardless of what, if that's what you want to do, regardless of what license class you have. It should just be purely because you want to have that on your label or have, grown and certified, or you want to do that. I don't think, there are times when 60% makes sense, because you want to play around, but that's not what this panel is about and what we're trying to accomplish here. What we're trying to accomplish is promoting things that are 100% New York, so that we can really stand fully behind what we're trying to do. And this is what they're trying to do, and I think this is what a lot of you are trying to do. Yeah.
Again, it might be cringeworthy, but how do you justify to the consumer that you're paying 25 to 40 cents more per pound and let that be a difference to them to want to have that 100% New York beer?
I just want to
Go
real
for it.
quick.
Yeah.
That's
So
a
when we
reality.
opened our brewery in August, we were so busy that we were kicking 2 beers every single week. We couldn't keep up, and we knew we had to get to winter when we would naturally slow down. So we raised our price $1 per glass overnight to try and slow things down. It didn't matter. Now, maybe that's because I'm a new brewery. I don't know if you guys have different experiences with that, but I think partially people are willing to spend a little bit more to come to me, maybe because you do have to go out of your way to get there. You already have an expectation when you leave your house, if you're coming to me, right, of what it's going to be and why it's different. I can't speak for you guys. You might have a similar feedback. I don't know, but
I mean, we did the same. Once we opened our new facility, we had our old pricing, and then eventually we were just this. We need we're going through the beer, and it kind of depends on your location and what you're able to do. Maybe there isn't that ability to just shift. But if you're going through it, there are adjustments. People need to understand that price is. I mean, you go into the other certain parts of Manhattan, you're paying $14 for a pint in some place. Our pints are $8, and we're trying to keep that consistent. But it's they have to I think the consumers have to understand that there can be an adjustment that will come, and you're not trying to gouge them, but there are prices. There are certain prices that you're paying, and looking at different malt houses across the country, some of the malt houses are $1.50 a pound, $1.45 a pound. What we're having here is really not that bad, and especially if you're doing it through the tap room, you should be able to make up those margins because you're able to. I'm not sure where your location is, but you should be able to hit that multiple over what the cost is going into it. But you had a question.
I was just gonna kind of piggyback off of Rachel's comment that some of the feedback that we have had, or even just some of our producers in the program, is that they are, because of the hyper-local movement, like people really want to support and they are willing to pay it without you even really having, it's not a matter of convincing them to do that, it's that they're like, oh, cool, I support my state and my farmers. And again, for her, if you can put on that, like, this supports this many farms in your backyard, people are, the feedback that I have received is that people are willing to do it without having to go that extra mile.
Jeff.
You guys never really, what were you facing, made that argument on your menus or anything like that. You never said, hey, we pay more for our ingredients, therefore our beers. You're sort of getting a bargain, or we shouldn't charge more. You've never had that conversation with you.
I didn't. So us personally, when we opened, I knew I wanted to be 100% New York ingredient. So we kind of built into our model, our business model, that this is going to cost. I'm not, and then, but our pints are not necessarily, I don't know, our base pint goes for $8 in our tap room in Brooklyn. That's totally within the norm within our area. So I don't know, what's it in Austin?
Ours is interesting because we're positioned kind of midway between the big regional selling across the country and around the world, and then other like-sized breweries. And that's one of the disconnects that we get with customers. You don't really understand the economy of scale. How much more just because we're so much smaller, it costs us to produce our beers versus the big regionals. But we've been trying to use that as a talking point, and Eric and I do it very well. Our servers probably not as well. We can always that's where
that's a whole other discussion.
Yeah, exactly. That's how it breaks down because it kind of depends on who's delivering the messages. But if anything, when you look at the bars and restaurants around us, we're probably positioned a little too low. We don't enjoy a 10-ounce pour. That's just us. And you get that in your hand is like working.
Feel like a jet, yeah.
Because we both very much identify with the united nature of beer and the working class nature of the beverage that we're serving. No, we're using super local ingredients. We still want to meet kind of both ends.
Yeah.
We can't go out of business doing it. But
yeah.
I would say we're probably midway.
Yeah.
From where
Matt, where you are, what do you do? I mean, what are you guys pricing?
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty much, we try to have like a $6 pale lager option on draft all the time, but we're like $8 for a pour.
And that's a full pint, that's 16 ounces?
Yeah, full pint.
Okay.
But I think we're close enough to, especially in the past 3-4 years since COVID, like the price point of everything in our area has kind of crept up a little bit. So I think we're kind of, we get the benefit of the doubt on that. But I think people understand, we kind of have always sat in more of a premium price point because of that. But that it's an opportunity. We just kind of say it's an opportunity to vote with your dollar, and that higher price point is some of that money is going to keep farmland being planted, and I think it trickles. I don't think everyone that walks in definitely doesn't take the time to think about that, but we are situated on a farm, so I think it kind of gets people into that headspace, and we kind of have grown our brand outward from our actual space, and I think that helps connect the dots for folks as well.
Yeah.
How are you guys? I'm familiar with stronger.
I don't know you.
But how do you tell that story? You were talking about using social media, maybe your website. How do you guys tell your consumers who you are, what you're doing, why that matters, why it's different?
Well, when you come to our brewery, you come to my house. So that's I got good days and I got bad days. No, but I try my best, and it's a pretty small staff, so like I'm not great at it, but I try my best to be like, okay, here's the 4 stories I want to tell this year. And understanding, it's going to take me a year to tell that story because I planted my barley, in September, and I don't harvest it till June or July, and then it doesn't come back from the malt house until October, or even maybe now, right? So the supply chain is very much what I'm focused on, and how that supply chain affects my day-to-day, not just like in my backyard, but like how it makes beer for you, right? And why you see what you see when you show up there. So I'm having a lot of dialogue, but I do my emails as well. I could be better at them. But in those emails, it's like, hey, what have we been doing on the farm? And like all winter long, nothing. But we're about to ramp up to some pretty busy time with a lot of content that we can share. And that will translate into the beers that, the beer launches that we have in the future. So an example, we did a chamomile blonde last fall. I grew the chamomile all summer, and I didn't take the opportunity to like show that then. But people are like, hey, when's that blonde ale coming back with the chamomile in it? Like, it was so bomb. Well, I got to harvest chamomile for like 3 months straight to get enough of it, right? So stay tuned and follow along. Coincidentally, my chamomile is like sprouting in my greenhouse right now. So like, we'll circle up on that in September when we brew it. It's long term. Like, my calendar is very kind of in the future.
Really, face to face.
And face to face, yeah. I mean, yeah, you're coming to my house.
Yeah, I know for us, we still, I think, we're kind of at this crux of where we're moving into a more heavy distribution-based model and going into other states and finding that that story doesn't work as well necessarily, but still I think for people that come to our place, we just kind of really sit in that place of connecting people. I don't know if you took a census of folks walking down the street who, like, how do you even make beer? What is like the ingredients of it? I think we're still connecting that dot for people daily when they come to our place that, oh, it's like an agricultural ingredient, and that, yeah, I mean, to me, I think that even just that we can sit in that space for long enough, and that's compelling enough for people that care, but that they don't even get past that point, that's enough to kind of like drive the point home.
No, and I
but
so in terms of like, I think kind of the pricing option and I think each place is going to be specific. Each like location, each region is going to be very like a little bit different. I do think that like it, if you feel that you need to explain that, then you probably should. Like, I think you just need to be able to like, express that. I mean, we should be expressing this anyways. And going kind of to what you were saying, like that you're now going out of state and maybe they don't care. I think that's exactly why we need to be doing more. Like, we need to be saying this going across state lines so that people know about what we're doing and what we're creating in New York beers, just as much as people know about the Vermont beer that's coming across the border. Like, oh, that's Vermont. Like, maybe it's not grown with New York or Vermont ingredients, but it is Vermont beer, and they know Switchback, and they know whatever, Zero Gravity. Like, they should know our beer, and they should know what we're doing, and they should know that, what we're producing in this room is 100% New York beer.
I just have a quick comment. I think this conversation becomes frustrating, right? Because we live in a state where people are super proud to be New Yorkers. Like, I love New York.
Yes.
Like, that campaign was one of the most successful campaigns ever, right? So, like, how do we as brewers, farmers, maltsters, people in the supply chain, like, resurrect the idea of, like, oh, this is New York grown. Yeah. This is the New York state of mind. You should come to New York and drink this, right? We actually have an opportunity because that foundation's already been laid. We just have to, as brewers, kind of coordinate together to tell that story. I think one of the things that hopefully is changing, but hasn't changed yet, is like the bigger breweries need to get on board. They have a far larger reach. Their consumer base is bigger. Their marketing spend is more. Like, their audience in and of itself is probably largely out of state, right? So we need to try and tell this story to them. They're looking at it from business economics, or go back to pricing and more expensive malt, so on and so forth. But, you know, there's a lot of people going out there calling themselves sustainable, supporting the community, whatever. And the reality is, are you? I think they need to get on board. That's probably the answer to that.
I just want to point out how important I think this conversation is. I love what you're saying. I completely agree. To dovetail off of that, it is so important for everyone in this room, everyone that's making New York State beers, using New York State ingredients, to talk about how good the ingredients are, talk about how good the beer is and how it is world class. If you're not telling the story, either it's not getting told or someone's telling it incorrectly. I'll give you just a really small example. For decades, the New York wine industry was making hundreds of thousands of gallons of sweet wine. And then once the farm winery license became a thing, people started making more high quality wines, wines that were not sweet, wines that would be akin to wines you'd see in California or France, other world-class regions. To this day, people still say to me, oh, well, New York State, they can only make sweet wines. Because for years and years, someone else was telling the story. If you're not telling the story, someone else will. So take charge of this. This is your industry, and this is your state. If you're not doing it, someone else will.
Yeah, and sorry, one last thing. Like, we also live in a state that's super supportive of agriculture. So, like, if you call your assembly person and you're like, hey, I think there needs to be more advocacy work. We're not doing a good enough job at this or that. Like, they will listen to you, because agriculture is one of the biggest industries in this state, whether you want to believe it or not. I mean, it truly is. So you're supporting farms. Talk to your ag people.
To that, and I know, like, basically going all around this. Why do you think there's such a disconnect? There's so many New Yorkers, not just New Yorkers, but all throughout the world, are really about farm to table. Why is farm black not being thought of? Like, why is there such a disconnect?
I mean, to Steven's point, I don't think the story is properly being told at the moment. I think there is a pride in being from New York, and people are proud of that to a point, but people don't necessarily know that there is, going out of the city centers, people don't know there's farmland.
Right.
They don't know that we have amazing dairy and cheese and maple syrup and beer, and this this is an agricultural state, just pure by volume. Like so much land is dedicated to that, and we're not necessarily proud. Like, we don't know. Like, I know there's tons of dairies, and I know there's tons of cheese makers out there, but like, where's the fucking cheese trail? I want to go on a cheese trail.
Washington County.
Yeah, totally. And there is, but why don't I know about that? Why doesn't anybody why is that not plastered all over the city? Go up to the Finger Lakes and go to the cheese. It's just not told that well. We're not telling the story.
You guys could also just change your mindset. Beer is considered a value-added agricultural product. Literally, that's how it's defined at the federal level. So, the reason I can have a brewery on my farm, even though I'm not zoned for manufacturing, is because it's a value-added agricultural product. Change the way you think about it to tell your story. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't have a farm, but you're making a farm product.
I don't.
That's kind of...
I don't think you want to grow anything down there. It's probably not going to be good. You want to? Yeah.
I'm not trying to diminish what you guys your goals are for 100%, ingredients
Sure.
for all your beers, but I try to make really great beer all the time. I'm sure everybody in New York who makes beer wants to do that as well. I try to take a different approach where I experiment with transitioning over, especially with hops. I make it the way I want to make it, then I'll transition over with hops that we get locally. And I've taken quite a few beers, 100% New York hops, and I think that's something that should be lauded as well, because it's a product that has multiple ingredients, and it's hard to get great ingredients for every Like, we're talking about the East, no one practically has, 100% New York East unless you're in the like wild, East project, and there's some crazy mad scientists who, got bees and apples and trees and all this crap going on. But if we're already trying to use a lot of the most New York ingredients that we can, I'm having problems sourcing high-quality grains in some cases that meet my standard. That's my issue, And one more thing I want to say is there was a comment before about getting some of the larger breweries to talk about the New York, all New York State. Is that from a perspective of made in New York or 100% New York ingredients?
So,
Because if you're talking about 100% New York ingredients, I don't know the math, but is there enough New York grown everything to support?
yes, and that can in this scale up. So unfortunately we are at the 2 o'clock time, and so we're breaking into somebody else's session. So we need to go. There are our manufacturers out there, so if you want to talk about that, go talk to them. There is stuff out there. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate you coming down. If you want to grab a beer, feel free to grab a beer. If you want to talk about it more, come talk to me. I'm always up for a discussion.